So, NFTs. Bought one of those recently? Maybe. Did you pay too much for it? We reckon you may well have done. Why? Well, 2 words. Wash trading. If you haven't heard those words, we're about to tell you what they are, and if you're at all interested in NFTs, or indeed any sort of financial skullduggery, you're going to want to hear this. So let's tell you what it is. Wash trading is a form of market manipulation. Essentially, an investor or investors repeatedly buy and sell the same financial instrument. What this does is artificially inflate the market for that instrument. In turn, it potentially allows commissions to be made, liquidity on instruments to appear bigger than they actually are, and innocent parties to potentially pay more than they should do for that instrument. Now, wash trading gives the mistaken impression that something is more in demand than it actually is, but it's not new. In fact, it's been around for quite a long time. The US actually made it illegal all the way back in 1936. Since then, rules have been imposed on wash trading of various varieties all over the world, but only really cover traditional instruments like securities. They haven't yet caught up with crypto, and markets, like those for NFTs, aren't yet covered. But they are starting to be talked about, and they're also the subject of books like NFT From Zero to Hero by Anndy Lian. We're actually going to hear from Andy in just a second about all of this, but first, let's just run through a quick example that Andy showed us to explain how this might happen with an NFT. So take a look at this data from Footprint Analytics. It covers activity on the X2Y2 marketplace for a single NFT from the Dreadfuls collection. It shows that one NFT, ID number 164, goes back and forth multiple times between the same 2 wallets. A total of 19 trades took place between those 2 on one single day, September the 1st this year. You can see address 1 here is in blue, while address 2 is in red. Now, these trades generated over 7,000 ETH in volume and 36 ETH in platform fees. Ethereum at the time was worth about $1,500 US. Now, as Andy explains, there are a couple of different motives for doing these sorts of wash trades.
Some of these marketplaces, they reward active users by giving them a return based on the whole trading volume. So wash traders will take advantage of this and then maximize their rewards by generating a huge trading volume. It's a form or a way to deceive users, who think that, oh, this collection is cool, it has good liquidity and is a good NFT to have. Then the type 2 that I look at, there's a false pumped value of NFT that's been transacted. People will think that this project itself is something that is very, very lucrative. Then the genuine buyers are then tricked into buying the NFT.
So how common is this, and are any of the big name collections likely to have been affected?
If you look at the market in general, almost all projects would have a little bit of wash trade. A little bit of wash trading is not something that is to be very alarmed or to be taken aback and so forth. Projects with good amount of liquidity, good number of community, with some wash trading, I think it's a very normal sign. It could be even a peer-to-peer between a friend. You just want to check up the price. I think that is fair. But there are other groups of projects with no community, purely working on wash trades to get their price up. I think those are the ones that are really bad actors, in this space. And these are the projects that you really want to avoid totally, because there is nothing backing up the project.
If you manage to spot one of these trades at work, though, there is something you can do about it. First of all, you can, of course, not buy the NFT, but it's worth considering, as Andy says, the bigger picture here.
So given that you like the design, the price point is good, the next thing for any normal retail buyer, would be looking at the community. It's more straightforward, because a retail buyer may not have the time to access to all the different tools that I've mentioned in my book, for example, but they can check on 2 things. One is the community, and then 2 is on the reality chart, right? So you know who are the people backing it? Are there real people? That's number one. And then number two is what exactly you're aiming for. I do not suggest normal buyers to really go through the details of on-chain analysis.
So is this something that regulators should actively be looking at, and what can the industry do to help?
Regulators are always playing a catching up game most of the time, and again, most of the time they do not really get the right kind of information from the industry. By the time they get the information, and again, usually it's too late. So I don't think the regulators are in that position to do an active role to police all these NFTs activities. I think education and information is something that is really lacking. Regulations will definitely kick in at a later stage, but not now, because right now it's still in a growing phase, and I hope to see it grow a lot faster and further.
Andy's advice is to always look for the support of a community, especially if you aren't sure on the purchase of an NFT or indeed anything else. So now you know, wash trading. There you go. What is information worth? In modern society, quite possibly it's worth more than anything else. But when it comes to things that are supposed to be public, not everyone is actually able to access the data that they are entitled to. Now, blockchain technology has the potential to transform this, as we know, and that's what we're talking about in this episode of Future Rules with Michael Morrissey. He's the founder of Muckrock, which is a non-profit organization that helps people get information from the US government. It's great to have you with us, Michael. Can you talk to us about what the gaps are in the current system in terms of accessing data for users, and how Muckrock is set to bridge these?
We primarily work with journalists, activists, other people who are trying to open up government or help the public better understand their world. And a lot of times that means kind of going after and analyzing and then sharing really sensitive materials. What we've seen is that companies and oligarchs and governments are increasingly sophisticated in sort of how they pressure hosting providers, how they pressure ISPs to kind of remove that information. So what you see is sort of the people who really need to be exposed are instead the ones protected through a lot of these maneuvers. And what blockchain does, and what Filecoin in particular does, is kind of help flip that so that you don't have to rely on sort of one sort of legal regime or one sort of hosting provider to kind of make sure that those documents are accessible. And we've seen time and time again, access to these primary source materials is really what helps convince the public that this is a legitimate issue, right?
So that's the theoretical attraction and practice of how this works. How is Filecoin and IPFS protocol helping overcome these roadblocks?
Yeah, I mean, I think increasingly you're seeing those theoretical challenges become real world challenges, right? I think one of the things we see is we had a countrywide block against one of our services because somebody filed a complaint about one document that we hosted. And that was, across an entire nation, we were unavailable for a week until we sorted out bureaucratically. And so what we're looking at is sort of the ability for Filecoin documents to be accessible via a range of ways to kind of route to that information. But also we've seen increasing pressure from hosting providers in terms of making this information available. So I think these things sort of seem theoretical. The splinter net seems sort of theoretical, but we're seeing sort of the edges of it, happening day to day for a lot of our users and across some of our services. Regulation
and lawmakers seem now to be catching up with a lot of this technology and bringing that into the regulatory sphere. How much concern do you think that that's going to have for those working in this sphere with data rather than with transactions?
Yeah, I absolutely think it's a really interesting time to be kind of like pushing the boundaries on some of these issues, right? And we've been talking with a lot of our users about GDPR, right? Okay, if they can push something to GDPR, but if they can push something to Filecoin, but they don't necessarily have the mechanisms to remove something from the network, what kind of liability does that kind of incur for them? What are some of the challenges, but also those opportunities? I think one thing we have consistently seen out of the European Union, GDPR regulations, right to be forgotten, is a lot of times that these come out as very well-meaning and in a lot of cases very important legislation in terms of sort of protecting privacy or making sure that there's ample competition. But instead, they kind of often have the opposite intent, right? We talked about the oligarchs who are using right to be forgotten and GDPR to kind of protect their misdeeds. And so I think this is a really important time where if we can get a strong civil society component in these discussions and we can kind of highlight these use cases and also these abuses, hopefully we can craft better regulation.
All right, that was Michael Morrissey from Muckrock talking to us there. You'll be able to hear more about this and plenty else at the Phil Lisbon Summit. That is coming up on October 30th and running until November the 4th. And finally, just a quick reminder that Forkast's latest Crypto Rising livestream event is coming next month. It's taking place 9 p.m. Eastern, November 14th, 9 a.m. Hong Kong time, November 15th. Forkast's editor-in-chief, Anndy Lian, will be leading the conversation into why some investors and VCs are betting big on digital asset startups despite the crypto window. Be sure to sign up at Forkast.news or by clicking the link in the description below. Otherwise, that's it from us. Like and subscribe to this video for more content like it.